That door wasn't locked. It was just left unsecured, and Marlene, with her knockoff HOA badge, walked straight into my hallway outside my daughter's bathroom. The steam was still curling under the door, and I could hear Leah crying on the other side, 15 years old and scared out of her mind, while this woman, who thinks bylaws are a badge and power is permission, stood there brushing invisible dust off her little emblem like she was the sheriff. "Do you want to explain to me," I said, my voice lower than usual, "why your emergency inspection required a master key while my daughter was in the shower?" She gave me that smirk people save for grocery baggers who crush the bread. "Security breach protocol 11C. You really should read the bylaws." That was her answer. I stepped closer, just enough so she could hear me say, "I help write the firmware your HOA locks use. That override key you love? It still pings my home server." Her smile died right there. If you've ever felt that little jolt standing up to a bully, you know how that moment feels, like you're twice your own size. She asked, "Who are you?" I answered, "Adam Roth. Single dad. Security systems engineer. And legally, every nail in this house belongs to me." Then, without breaking eye contact, I tapped a code on the lock panel. The deadbolt clicked. "You won't be using that key again." Her jaw set hard. "This is obstruction. You're interfering with a board-authorized inspection." "No," I said. "I'm protecting my daughter. And if you thought I was just another quiet neighbor, you just made the worst mistake of your HOA career." She backed off, but not before dropping a violation slip on my counter, like a ransom note for existing. But it wasn't the paper that got to me. It was the towel Leah dropped on the floor, damp and panicked. She hadn't even dried off, just threw on clothes and barricaded herself in her room. I knocked. "Leah." No answer. Just the faint scrape of her dresser pushing up against the door. This wasn't the first time she'd barricaded herself in. Not since the last town. Not since her mom died, and we moved here to start over. That bathroom was the only place she'd ever felt safe enough to sing again, to leave the door unlocked. And now some wannabe cop with a badge that meant nothing had broken that, too. I sat down in the hallway, legs too shaky to stand. Stared at the ceiling. I pulled out my laptop and checked the logs. 3:17 p.m., override access by Marlene Fenwick. 6 times in the last month. 4 of those times weren't even her assigned buildings. It was a pattern. Mrs. Bell was out walking her dog early that morning. "Everything okay with your daughter?" she asked, eyes flicking to the house. "She's rattled," I said. "Marlene used her key." Mrs. Bell let out a sigh like she'd been holding it in for weeks. "She did it to Cheryl last year, claimed mold check. Cheryl was changing her bag. Never really recovered. Board always takes Marlene's side. There are cameras," she added. "Marlene had them installed by the leasing center. Not for security, just to watch." That was all I needed. I logged into the system using a default password no one bothered to change. 2 minutes, and I had the footage, Marlene walking into my backyard. No knock. Just a key and a god complex. I saved the video. Twice. By noon, the HOA sent out a bulletin, "Unannounced inspections for community safety." That's when I realized it wasn't just Marlene, it was the whole board. Or at least people willing to look the other way. That night, Leah came out for just long enough to microwave soup, eyes darting to mine, trying to look okay. I told her, "You're not crazy. This isn't normal. It's not going to happen again." She didn't reply, but she didn't hide either. That was progress. I started digging through the bylaws, looking for entry rules, emergencies, anything. But what I found wasn't what was there, it was what was missing. There was no incorporation status, no legal standing for enforcement authority. That's when I decided to talk to Daniel. Daniel was the board's treasurer, the kind of guy who avoided attention, but you could tell he knew more than he let on. I showed up at the office. "Marlene's not in," he said, still tapping away at his spreadsheet. "I'm here for you, not her," I replied. He paused, eyes flicking up. "You're Adam, right?" I nodded. "I don't support what she did," he whispered, glancing at the door. "But I'm not the one with the keys." "No, you're the one who signs reimbursement reports for duplicate keys." He went quiet, then slid a slim folder across the desk, a collection of notes, emails, documents. "Proof. You didn't get this from me." Inside, emails about lapsed insurance, proof of incorporation never renewed, even Marlene's direct reply. "We have visual authority. The bylaws stand. Do not escalate." That's not law. That's just intimidation. The HOA had no legal right to do any of this. I called Dawn Patel, the attorney who'd helped me close on this house. Told her what I'd found. She called back at dawn. Willowbrook Estates HOA was dissolved almost 3 years ago. No legal standing. No authority. She sent me a notarized statement and links to state records. If they keep pushing, let me know. I'll enjoy returning the favor. Armed with that, I finally confronted Marlene when she came knocking. Clipboard, smug smile, all sugar and static. I handed her the legal letter. This proves every fine, every entry, every inspection you've ordered is illegal and uninsurable. Her mask slipped. This changes nothing, she tried. The community relies on order. No, I said. The community relies on trust. And you broke that the second you walked into my home without consent. I told her if she tried it again, I'd press charges and take it public. She left, for good this time. Word spread fast. Daniel brought me an audit. 12 unauthorized entries, mostly residents who'd complained or didn't vote. Marlene's way. Cheryl confirmed Marlene had entered her place, too. With enough evidence, I filed an emergency motion with the county, scheduled a public post for the entire community. Silent while a young county liaison read the legal findings. Willowbrook Estates HOA, dissolved, all actions void. Further trespass potentially criminal. People stood up. Hector, Cheryl, Mrs. Bell, and told their stories. Daniel stood up, too. You crossed the line, he said to Marlene. That day, the county froze the board, set up an interim committee, and scheduled a new election. For the first time, there was real relief in the room. 2 weeks later, the old signs came down. No more red tags, no more fear. The locks were changed, no more master key, no more secret power. Leah noticed the difference first. She left her window open, sang in the shower again. She even smiled. The story spread, not just here, but to other neighborhoods. People reaching out, saying our fight gave them courage. In the end, I didn't need control. I just needed my daughter to feel safe in her own home again. That's how you end a reign of fear. One locked door. One stubborn neighbor, one truth at a time. And if you've ever lived under the thumb of an HOA like that, maybe it's time you stood up, too. If you want to see more stories of homeowners fighting back, hit subscribe. And let me know in the comments, where do you draw the line between order and overreach? I wish I could tell you the change was instant, that the whole neighborhood woke up the next morning with sunlight pouring through every open window. But honestly, that's not how real life works, is it? The day after the board meeting, people mostly kept their heads down. Old habits, I guess, die slow. But something subtle had shifted. The air felt lighter, the kind of hush you get after a storm, like the ground is waiting to see if the sky is really clear. It took a few days for folks to stop looking over their shoulders before walking their dogs, for Cheryl to step outside without clutching her phone like a panic button, for Mrs. Bell to actually smile and wave instead of ducking her head. Greg, the old maintenance guy who'd been too scared to speak up at the meetings, showed up early one morning fixing a busted mailbox, whistling like nothing had ever happened. First time I'd ever heard him make a sound that wasn't just a nervous cough. As for me and Leah, it was the little things. The way she started using the bathroom again without checking the lock 3 times. The mornings when she'd wander into the kitchen, hair tangled, half awake, asking if there was any orange juice left instead of just texting me from her room. The first Saturday, after the board was suspended, she even went outside to sketch on the porch, hoodie up, headphones in, pretending she didn't see me watching her from the window. But she was there. That was the win. The interim committee, just a handful of neighbors, no titles, no fancy folders, met in the clubhouse for the first time 2 days later. No one sat at the head of the table. Daniel showed up with coffee and donuts. Cheryl brought her brother who took notes on a yellow legal pad. Hector, the old Vietnam vet, volunteered to keep an eye on community security. Just don't give me a badge. He joked. Everyone laughed, but there was a real edge behind it. The kind that says, never again. Marlene? She vanished. Didn't even show up to collect her personal stuff from the office. They asked questions, challenged expenses, argued over whether we needed new speed bumps. But nobody was afraid of who might be listening anymore. That was the difference. We weren't just residents. We were a community, finally. Still, the scars were slow to fade. Every once in a while, you'd hear about another neighborhood going through the same thing. Folks would stop me outside the mailbox, ask if I still had the Willowbrook file backed up. I kept it on a USB drive taped inside my breaker box, a quiet insurance policy in case anyone ever got too comfortable with power again. One afternoon, Cheryl called. "Local news wants to do a story," she said, voice a mix of nerves and pride. "You want to talk to them?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to let it all go. But Leah heard the call and nudged me. "You should. Someone else might need it." And she was right. Maybe there's always someone who needs to know it's possible to fight back. Even if it's messy. Even if you're scared. Even if you're outnumbered. Maybe especially then. The reporter was young, fresh out of school, but she listened. She asked about the day Marlene used her key, about the panic, about the silence that followed. She wanted a hero's ending, but I told her, it's not that simple. This isn't about one villain. It's about what happens when people get too used to silence. She nodded, scribbling in her notebook. That's what she ran with, a headline about ordinary people pushing back against HOA overreach. A few weeks later, someone from 2 counties over emailed to say our story had given their whole neighborhood the guts to call for a vote of their own. Funny thing is, it never really felt like a fight once it was over. More like cleaning out a wound. It stings, it's ugly, you don't want to look at it, but you have to if you want to heal. The next board election felt more like a block party. Kids ran around the clubhouse, someone brought cupcakes, and Hector grilled hot dogs in the parking lot. I got nominated for committee chair and politely turned it down. Let someone else do the paperwork. I'll fix the tech if you need me. That's how I liked it. Quiet, useful, out of the spotlight. Leah got her first real invitation to a friend's house that spring. She asked if I'd be okay home alone, and I told her, that's the idea, right? She rolled her eyes, but she smiled. A real one. That night, the house was quiet in a way I hadn't heard since before her mother died. No tension, just peace. A few months passed. The mailbox filled up with normal junk again. Pizza coupons, election flyers, some dentist offering free x-rays. The panic faded into memory. But every now and then, I'd hear a neighbor stop, mid-conversation, glance at the gate, and whisper, I still can't believe she just walked in. Neither can I, if I'm honest. But maybe that's the lesson. You can't ever get so comfortable you forget to check who's holding the keys. Maybe that's why I left the new lock's master code in a sealed envelope, taped inside the community safe, with a note, for emergencies only, signed by the residents. And if you're listening to this and thinking, that would never happen where I live, well, maybe you're lucky. Or maybe you just haven't needed to find out yet. Either way, keep your doors locked, your record straight, and don't be afraid to ask hard questions. So, tell me, if it came down to it, would you stand up, or would you stay silent? Where do you draw the line? I want to know your story. Drop it in the comments. And if you want to see what happens when ordinary folks take their power back, go ahead and hit subscribe. Because sometimes, justice is just one stubborn neighbor away.